right. What's up, everyone? We know the last thing you need is another fitness podcast to catch you up on the newest trends, fad diets that are based on popular opinion and not research. Enter myself, Mariana. We made the Fitness Stuff for Normal People podcast to make exercise and nutrition science practical. Our goal is to expose misinformation in this industry by providing only evidence-based education, where today we are doing a highly anticipated part 2, which will be a new reoccurring monthly piece in studies that blew our minds. But first,
all right, as you guys know, our show is free and always will be free. Some of the best ways to support us so that we can continue to reach as many people as possible is to give us a 5-star review. We also just started a Patreon page. If you'd like to become a member there, we will release new content every single month. And I'd like to take a second to give a shout out to our sponsor of today's episode, Eat This Much. Eat This Much is a meal planning app and website. It allows you to conveniently set your own calorie, macro goals, micronutrient goals, fiber goals, access to thousands of meal prep friendly recipes. You can create customizable meal plans, generate weekly grocery lists in order of the groceries that come from each recipe, which is really awesome. This is part of the premium version. There is a free version that has a lot of great features. If you'd like to do a free trial there, you can also get 20% off Eat This Much Premium at eatthismuch.com/fitness stuff. That's eatthismuch.com/fitness stuff. It'll be linked in our show notes. Now
and bio.
Let's get into it, Tony. I'm ready to go today. You're starting us off. We did a new thing here where I haven't even read or looked into any of the studies that Tony's sharing. He hasn't looked into mine. So I'm really excited to hear this.
We're jumping the gun a little bit because we're missing the biggest part of today. Should I bring it up again? So there's this weird conspiracy theory that the government got rid of roly-polies like 10 years ago. Because I'm like, when's the last time I saw a roly-poly? I played with them as a kid all the freaking time. You kick them around, stuff like that. I'm like, it's been like 10 years. I haven't seen a single one. And she's like, what did you just call me a roly? What? Did you call me a roly-poly? I'm like, no, like roly-polies. She doesn't know what a roly-poly is.
I thought it was a tumbleweed.
Honestly, I'm just dying to know because I'm like, this wasn't just my childhood. Maybe this is a Mandela effect. I'm going to put that in the show. I'm going to put that as a Spotify poll. Are roly-polies real? Have you heard of a roly-poly? Sorry, that just blew my freaking face off. But now we can talk about the research because that's what got to give the people what they want. So like you just said, we're doing 2 studies each like last time based on y'all's feedback. Thank you guys so much for messaging us, letting us know how much you guys like the episode. We're going to go a little bit deeper, go into some of the limitations of the studies, try and spend a little bit more time on them than last time because it was a little quicker. So please keep the DMs coming in if you want to let us know how you like the episodes. If you want more, want different, want anything else, we love it. Or just have positive feedback. I'm going to go ahead and get started with a study that I've pulled out. Now, I've talked about this study quite a bit. I don't think on social media too much, but when I give different corporate speaking events, this is usually put into one of my talks. Don't get mad at me for this because I feel like I pull a lot of studies that have to do with all-cause mortality.
Well, a lot do.
Death is scary. A lot do. The good ones do. So it's not meant to scare anybody, but it's just so freaking interesting to me, certain things that can contribute. Here's what I pulled up, and I'm going to butcher this name, but this was a study done out of Kitasato University Hospital in Japan. This is done a few years ago. They looked at how closely related something as specific to your quadriceps strength could be related to all-cause mortality. Just the strength, the isometric strength of your quadricep or your quad muscles. Very specific. And we could talk about this afterwards, but there's been several studies too on just overall grip strength, leg strength, different strength mass tests. But this one was looking at isometric quadricep strength. And for all those who don't know, all-cause mortality just means rates of death from all causes, right? So this could be heart disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, anything. Death. So here's what they did though. They did initial quadricep strength tests, and then they did a 5-year follow-up with another isometric quadricep strength test. So they did an initial test, and then 5 years later, they did a follow-up. This totaled over 6,500 in-person years across all participants. This was a larger study done. And then what they did at the start of the study is they separated the participants into 4 different groups based on their strength, the strength of their quadriceps. The weakest to the strongest, right? So group 1 had the weakest quadricep strength, 2, 3, 4 being the strongest. That's how they ranked them. At the end of the study, They found that group 4, the strongest group, had a 62% reduction in cases of all-cause mortality, and an even bigger number, an 83% reduction in cardiovascular specific death compared to the weakest group. So strongest to weakest. And the good news is the top 3 strongest groups were actually fairly close together. It was the weakest group that really straggled off. Now, to state those numbers conversely, being in the weakest quadriceps strength group was associated with a near 3-fold greater risk of all-cause mortality and an over 8-fold greater risk of cardiovascular death in this study. Which is pretty big. This is wow.
Sorry.
This is just quadriceps strength. And I think there's a few reasons for this, what I want to dive into. But the theme of this study is that you should be prioritizing building and holding onto muscle like your life depends on it, because it might. I think the biggest thing is not even just overall how long you're going to live, your longevity, but the quality of life that goes along with this. I think on this podcast, we've talked about it before. What's the number one reason people end up getting checked into nursing homes? It's because they can't get off the toilet by themselves. They don't have the lower body strength to do 1/2 rep of a body weight squat to get themselves off the toilet. They need someone to help them do that. And I'm guessing once you get checked into a nursing home, your quality of life probably is going down significantly. Significantly, right? So people are like, it's your quads, it's muscle. How important really is it? We were talking to Alan about his aging parents. I've had to see this in my aging grandmother, where just a couple small injuries, like a shoulder injury, things like that, limiting protein intake, and then just muscle not being carried on the tissue, the amount that you, for lack of better terms, just start withering away. And it's impossible to claw your way back into it is scary, is terrifying. Have you heard of this study before?
I've heard of, I probably have, just from school and all of the literature I've read on prolonging your lifespan, living a healthier and longer life, delay muscle loss as much as you can. Hold on to as much lean muscle mass as you possibly can. Resistance train. The answer will always stay the same. I don't think that's ever going to change in terms of what's the easiest, most consistent response you can give across the board to delay the aging process. Resistance train. Lifting weights.
It is. It's a lot more important than just looking good. Like people that want to get a 6-pack or have big biceps or have big glute, whatever. It's a lot more important. Let's look at it. What's really important? Yeah, you might look a little bit better, but what is 10 extra years of quality life, a decade of quality life with maybe a family you've built or just a life that you've built and want to live? Like 10 years of quality life, I think is so massive.
I feel like you hear so many people our age who talk about like, oh, I don't want to live until I'm 70, 80. That's going to suck. We're not necessarily talking about when you get into the 80, 85, 90 range. Yeah, you're going to be old there, but the years before that, you're adding on years to your life, making those 50s, 60s, even 70s so much more positive.
You see 2 70-year-olds next to each other. One could be down in just here in San Diego. You see 70-year-olds at the beach surfing at 6 a.m. Right? You also see 70-year-olds who are stuck in a wheelchair because their life has been so immobile up to this point. That's just at the point. 70 years old doesn't mean one thing. It can mean 2 massively different things. But I want to expand on the study a little bit and go over a couple, I think, good things that this study looked at and a couple limitations that might have had work. Because although there was over 6,500 in-person years over the course of this study, and it was larger, it's not like a study group of, 10 people or 20 people, like certain ones that we've mentioned before. So that's always a good thing. That's a positive, right? A couple other good things is they adjusted the data throughout this entire study, right? For your age, body mass index, previous heart failure, previous stroke tests in all the individuals. So they looked at it going into it. Were these people more predisposition to all-cause mortality, to cardiovascular disease or not? They also had a decent amount of participants that spanned over a 5-year period. This was not a short time period study, which I really appreciate. Now, the limitations, I think why we can't draw conclusions and say, okay, like your quad strength will make you live longer, definitively, because that's one thing. The study did not differentiate between which participants resistance trained to get their quadriceps that strong or had more natural strength in their quadriceps. They didn't test differences between who trains right now and who just has this and does not resistance train. I think that could have been a cool area to expand on, right? Who is like currently resistance training and who is not, independent of quad size and strength. The only other thing is the study also did not measure protein intake or daily movement across the study. But as a limitation, is that one thing? Yes, but if we really want to focus on this one narrow piece, I think they did a pretty damn good job from start to finish. But as we go into it, I know there's been several other studies, not just testing this, but there's a very similar study with very similar outcomes testing overall grip strength in all-cause mortality. It's strength all over the place. It's abundantly clear. You can work out to look good. You can do this. But especially as you age, it becomes a lot harder to, one, build muscle. So you're much better off like just setting your body up now, adjust to a higher protein intake in your diet. So that's a normal thing for you. So later in life, you just got to maintain, baby. That's all you got to do.
I have a really weird side note that's just random, but it's kind of related that I just thought of. But if this
is about rollie pollies?
No, stop. If anyone's listening to this right now and is either in like college right now, is really interested in studying like exercise science or maybe thinking about changing career paths, this is really interesting to them. The field of exercise physiology, this is what you do. You prescribe exercise as part of your work. So you will take clients that are at high risk of developing cardiovascular disease, have metabolic syndrome, and you will test their grip strength. You will test their quad strength. You will do sit to stand tests with them, and you will work with them. You will prescribe exercise to them to improve those metrics, because the literature is so sound on how those metrics determine health outcomes like cardiovascular disease risk, all-cause mortality, metabolic syndrome. So that was just a side note. That's a really cool field.
I think so. I think it's a really cool note. So that wrapped up the first study that blew my mind. Those numbers, 3-fold increase in all-cause mortality and 8-fold increase in cardiovascular deaths specifically. Those aren't small numbers, right? Those aren't like small little, increased risk of 2%. It's not small. So that's why that study absolutely blew my mind. I know muscle matters, but I think that just puts a little more perspective of, okay, realize why you're really doing it. Even if you can have the perfect workout, the perfect physique, if you're strength training, if you're eating protein, even if you don't look like a Greek god or goddess, you are setting yourself up for a great freaking life. Is there anything you want to add on top of that before we jump into yours? Are you sound with that?
I'm sound with that. That was a great way to start. Really like that.
All right, let's roll into the next one.
It couldn't be more polar opposite than what I'm going to be talking about. So I also like that, kind of having a range of different types of studies, what we're looking at. So this is completely different end of the spectrum. We are looking at cross-sectional analysis. So this is an observational study. This is not the gold standard randomized controlled trial, but what these studies do is really allow you to look at behaviors of populations, help you determine disease states of certain populations who maybe eat certain foods, exercise a certain amount. So that's just a little side note there. So although RCTs are the gold standard, observational studies are incredibly important in the field of nutrition, exercise science literature. The study is called Self-Reported Health, it's a long one, without clinically measurable benefits among adult users of multivitamin and multimineral supplements, cross-sectional study. So the goal of this study was to compare self-reported, so what these people were reporting, and clinically measurable health outcomes, so what was reported in a lab from a blood test, among multivitamin and multimineral, I'll just call them multivitamin for this case, users and non-users. So what people thought these multivitamins were doing versus what their blood test actually said of people using multivitamins and those not. It was self-reported overall health and clinically measurable health outcomes in 21,603 participants. So this is from the 2012 National Health Interview Survey. If those of you are unfamiliar with what that is, these are released, I don't know if it's every year or every 5, I have to look into it how often, but these are huge, wide scale surveys to get a wide variety of metrics on so many different health outcomes and measures. So this is a big one. So they looked at self-rated health status. So again, what you think your health is like, to needing help with routine needs. So those are like activities of daily living. So say if you're older, if you need help with walking, getting to and from, reaching to grab something off a shelf. 3, history of 10 chronic diseases. for the presence of 19 health conditions in the past 12 months. So health conditions could be anything from disease, a marker of disease like high blood pressure or high cholesterol, so blood tests like that. And then they used the Kessler-6 psychological distress scale to measure non-specific psychological distress in the past month. So those are a few markers there. So there were 4,933 multivitamin users and 16,670 adult non-users. Multivitamin users self-reported 30% better overall health than non-users, which is interesting. There was no differences between multivitamin users and non-users in history of 10 chronic diseases, number of any present health conditions, severity of current psychological distress, and rates of needing help with daily activities. Regardless of those who were taking multivitamin and those who were not, no difference at all. However, those who were taking multivitamin reported that they had better health than those who did not take a multivitamin. So even though their clinical status was exactly the same, multivitamin users actually thought they were healthier. And they compared this, so they stratified between groups. So they separated them out into different groups, which is why surveys, especially clinical-based surveys from hospital medical data, can be so cool and helpful, is you can separate people into different groups. So they looked at between sexes, so male versus female, within females, within males. They separated by education level, race. Nothing was different. No changes. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. Why might this be significant? I kind of like to pull that away, especially from observational studies where you can't say any cause and effect. But thousands of people taking multivitamin actually thought their health status was better than those who did not take multivitamin. That makes sense. And that there's no difference in their health. None across the board.
It reminds me of our greens episode. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
When we were reviewing some data for that.
And this goes back to a lot of people who take multivitamin have positive expectations about what these multivitamins do to better their health. So there's a little bias. There's an intrinsic bias there that you actually think it's helping you, even though it's not. It's not doing anything. Again, there are studies that actually show, like, this was not a randomized controlled trial comparing multivitamin users to non-multivitamin users. This was really more of a behavioral, like getting into that psychological, what do people think when they're taking these? Which I thought was interesting.
Well, that's what's interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes into everything we do and why we're here, like, there are so many people, like, your biases, for some people, there's no changing that. Like, people can't see anything else. And it's why there's so many people that get on the internet today and really are just completely rooted and deeply rooted into their own beliefs and what they think they're doing is right for them. So must be true. So this has, like, so many implications for public health, like, measures when it comes to the supplement industry, like how practitioners are recommending supplements. Like, maybe that's why there's been such a huge shift in multivitamin recommendations, because many practitioners know these don't do anything. And of course, there's always limitations, especially when it's an observational study, but can't show any causal relationship, like I just said, between self-reported health and multivitamin use. However, like I said, this is really kind of getting into that, like, psychological aspect of how are people behaving? What are they thinking when they're taking this? And because it was self-reported, that always leaves room for some bias there, but it doesn't take away from the significance of the findings, especially when you're looking at such a large group of people.
I like it because the studies that we were going over in the greens episode about I think those were more the RCTs.
Yes.
The things that were looking directly at, okay, someone taking multivitamin, someone not.
And that's what's informed a lot of this study. Like, because it's like, okay, we know that people know they don't work. We know that these are not working. Why are people still taking them?
The crazy thing about this one that I think is really cool is it asks people, what do you think about your health? It's like just the small pattern of taking a multivitamin. Yeah. Taking a multivitamin makes someone think that they are, which honestly
30% better than those who weren't taking them. Like, that's
Did you say how many people
Yeah,
were
so
involved in
it's
this one or no?
21,603.
I forget. That's a lot. Okay, I'm a little shocked because you know how we were talking to Stan about this, I think, but a lot of the problem with the data shared on like the Netflix documentaries about the vegan versus red meat eaters in their overall health outcomes, there's also this massive thing where it's like, okay, red meat in the average American diet isn't coming from a very good source, right? It could be McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. Vegans probably care a little bit more about their health overall. They probably exercise a little bit more. They do all this. I'm surprised something similar wasn't here, where there was no skew in the feedback of like, okay, the individual is taking a multivitamin. Maybe they do live some sort of a different lifestyle than those who don't on average. It's cool, but I'm kind of shocked that there wasn't a little bit of sway.
Yeah, just from like, the idea that exercise, like taking multivitamin, may make you just be more healthier on average.
But it's cool. And they thought they were more healthy. That's kind of scary though. These people thought they were good and they weren't.
Yeah, they reported 30% better health overall than non-users. So like they thought that they were, like their reports of what their actual health status was like 30% better than those who reported not taking supplements. But yeah, it's just like this inflated, like I think I am healthier than I am.
Let's go deep. Let's go conspiracy. No, let's not go conspiracy. But I'm thinking, if you think your health is better than it actually is, are you more likely to skip doctor's appointments or delay getting things checked out?
Take the doctor's advice.
Exactly. Because you think you're healthier than you actually are. You're like, no, honestly, I'm good. Like, I'm pretty healthy. When it's like, really, like, are you? That's kind of interesting to me too. Like, what are like the second, third order consequences of this? Ooh, I like that one.
I do too. Yeah, I thought that was cool. That was cool. Of course, I like to give this balance because you hear all the time that yes, randomized controlled trials are the gold standard for determining associations, predicting how something may affect your health. But observational studies, especially from a public health behavioral perspective, are so important and inform. So now you have all of this data, right, from 21,000 participants. Taking that and using that to get a randomized controlled trial funded, approved, so important.
Yeah. This is research that blows our mind. And I think sometimes people, and because we get the comments all freaking days, will review some sort of research. We won't claim anything from it. We'll just say, hey, check this out. That's kind of cool. And people are like, oh, here's the problem here. Here's the problem there. It's like, there are problems in any, you could pick apart any piece of research ever, but like, things like this, if it's not an RCT, it's like, that still has so much practical use to it. We got to remember that there's a lot of different kinds of research that's
one of the fundamental issues with not understanding how to review research is like, we know like that what this means from an application standpoint. That research is flawed, kind of what to pull from it. If we were applying it in some area, like we get that. But people who hear hear research and they're like, oh, this causes this. This means this. It's like,
okay, that's a very good point.
Research is set out to answer a question of why. You're constantly asking questions and you're constantly aiming to answer them. Theory comes from research, and a lot of theories can be proven and become fact. However, a lot of theories just remain theories that are constantly questioned and constantly getting closer to fact, but there's so much room they can sway both ways. And I think that is like just forgotten. If research was only cause and effect, we wouldn't continue to build on these theories.
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I think it's really important. I think hopefully the listeners want to know this too. How many times on our videos that we post when we're going over, like for example, I reviewed this study, I think last time, about ghrelin response from the milkshakes, right? The kind of placebo effect, right? Like you tell one group they're getting this, one group they're getting this, but they're getting the same exact thing and they have different hormonal responses to that. That's impressive. It's done with 46 people and people just tear that apart. It's only 46 people. Doesn't matter. It's not significant. Whatever. It's like, we're not saying it's doing anything. We're not saying this is a cause and effect relationship. We're just saying this is a very interesting piece. Kind of like the creatine study too.
People don't understand. You got to start somewhere. That's novel research.
Exactly.
That is a randomized controlled trial. You need at least 30 people to do statistical analyses and determine something as statistically significant. And with new research, you cannot recruit that many people. And with a lot of research, you just have to
Mm-hmm.
replicate many studies with smaller samples because it's impossible to recruit
Mm-hmm.
that many people. But yeah, that grinds my gears.
It's a very important note. There's so much meaning behind something like the one you just went over.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really cool.
All
Down
right,
the
back to
rabbit hole.
Tony.
Snatch it back. Snatch it back. Snap it back. My second study. Dang, we started off with some bangers, I think. We
Yeah, that
got
was
some good
fun.
ones. Now, this one's pretty fun. It's a study looking at alcohol intake and its effect on sleep quality. Can you guess where this one's going? Bum, 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 bum. Now, this was done in Finland. This study was actually pretty cool because they looked at a few different things. And there's a lot of different studies done on alcohol and sleep, and marijuana and sleep, and THC specifically, and nicotine, and a lot of different drugs on their effect on sleep. And I think
when I have an edible, I feel like I get hit by a truck the next day. I don't know if that's what's you're going.
I gotta stay away from those. I get anxious.
Not good.
A scared little girl. I want to pee. I want to pee my pee. No, but it's really interesting. And I think we can talk a lot about it because we've looked a lot. I can't wait till we get an expert in here on sleep so we can do a whole episode on sleep. Dr. Matthew Walker.
I was going to say.
Here's what they did, though. They had over 4,000 subjects, 4,098 subjects that they took a look in here. And this was in the great old country of Finland. What they did was they compared each subject's baseline, a sober night's sleep, to their differences in sleep quality through several different metrics, consuming low amounts of alcohol, which means less than these measurements are going to be a little bit off, not off, a little bit shocking, I think, to some people, compared to when they drink low amounts of alcohol before bed, which they categorize this as less than 2 drinks if you're a male, less than 1 drink for females. Moderate drinking before bed, 2 drinks for a male, 1 drink for a female. So the low is less than, moderate is 2 drinks for male, 1 drink female. High was more than 2 drinks for a male, more than 1 drink for a female. So they separated them into low, moderate, and high doses and looked at their differences in sleep. Now, it's kind of crazy to me because you think when you hear the word like high dose of alcohol before bed, in my mind, I'm thinking like 5, 6, 7, 8 drinks. Like you think a high dose of alcohol before bed, you're not thinking just over 2 drinks, right? Just over 2 drinks. But here's what it did to their sleep quality. They noticed on average the low amount. So for males drinking less than 2 drinks, females drinking less than 1 drink, it decreased their overall sleep quality by 9.3%. So just under 10% for less than a drink for females, less than 2 drinks for male. Moderate drinking, right? 2 drink male, 1 drink female, decreased sleep quality by 24%. So that's a big jump. And high drinks, high dose drinks, over 2 for male, over 1 for females, decreased overall sleep quality by 39.2%. 39.2%. Now, they did find, and this is something I think we've even talked about before, I don't know if it was on recording or not, it did increase their sleep latency, or I guess decrease their sleep latency. Sleep latency being how quickly they fall asleep after laying down in bed. That's how quick from when your head hits the pillow to when you fall asleep. It did decrease the amount of time significantly there, but it significantly lowers the time spent in REM, rapid eye movement stage of sleep, right? The memory consolidation, that mental repair stage of sleep, especially in the first half of the night, and increases the amount of times they woke up through the night. So these are all different notes. I think Matthew Walker was talking about it like this. People might think it's a good thing when they fall asleep faster, right? Their sleep latency decreases. They think it's a good thing. But as he put it, you're not naturally falling asleep faster. You are being sedated faster, which is a big difference. And the crazy thing, and this wasn't mentioned in the study, but Matthew Walker's talked about this quite a bit. When you fragment your sleep from drugs and alcohol, right? When you fragment, meaning you're waking up small little bits, but it's just tossing and turning, waking up throughout the night. When you do it through THC and alcohol, you typically don't remember these wake ups. But if you wear a tracker like Aura or something else, you'll see these small little, I know I do when I have a couple drinks, glasses of wine before bed, I'll see a couple wake up times through the night. So this is why I think so many people that need that extra nightcap or 1 or 2 drinks before they go to bed, I can't fall asleep without it. They're not realizing they're exhausted when they wake up in the morning. That's why. It's because your quality of sleep is getting trashed, even though it's helping you fall asleep a little bit faster.
I
a little bit faster.
Cannot even wrap my head around the fact that a nightcap is normalized in our society. Like eat blows my mind. Like absolutely blows my mind. And I have a drink here and there. There's nothing wrong with having a healthy relationship to alcohol, but alcohol is inherently bad for you. You can have a good relationship with alcohol, not drink much. Every time you drink, you're doing harm. You're harming your body. There's no like, that's not an opinion. And it's crazy how normal it never fails to blow my mind, especially when you have such solid research like this. Like,
it makes sense though, because I think a lot of people do struggle from sleep issues, insomnia, falling asleep. They have a real hard time. So if you're sitting here and you're not as well versed in the research and actually looking, it's like, okay, is alcohol really that bad for me? It's like, but if I have 2 drinks, like I can fall. If I'm not having drinks tonight, I'm up until 2 or 3 in the morning, or I have a drink and I'll pass out in 10, 20 minutes and I'll be good. Yeah. That's where I empathize with them, even though like at least understanding where it's coming from, it's like, oh, they're solving a problem. So I think in their head, it's like a good thing to do, but it is crazy when you actually learn more and look into this. I think I would recommend for everyone listening to that new Huberman lab that came out.
I was just going to bring
on
up
alcohol's effect on the body.
His tweet the other day.
I haven't finished it. Oh wait, what did he say?
Alcohol is the only drug where if you don't do it, people assume you have a problem. And he was quoting Chris Williamson. Andrew Huberman.
Read that again. Alcohol is the only drug where if you don't do it, take it, people assume you have a problem, which is so true in social situations. Like it is like if you say, no, I'm just gonna have some water, you get some weird looks. You get a little like, it's not normal for people to just not drink. It could be a Tuesday, Wednesday night going out for dinner. And it's like, everyone's getting a drink. You say, no, I'll just go with water. Like, order a cocktail, get a beer.
I've been honestly experiencing that because it's been the first like few months of me just being sober for my anxiety and depression. The amount of times I just choose not to go out because that question infuriates, like, I'm also a loose cannon, but that question infuriates me, especially when it's coming from, the people who care about you. And they're like, oh, why are you being boring? Like, what? Like, well, now I want to be boring and now I don't want to talk to anyone because you assume that I'm not enjoying myself because I'm sober. Weird. Because I was, and now that just bothered me and I want to leave.
It's like one thing to ask a question. Like if everyone's getting a drink and then you get water, like, oh, do you not want a drink? But it's another thing when it's like a pestering.
Totally fine.
Like when it's a continuous, if you can just say, oh no, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm just good with water. It's a fucking Tuesday. Like you have to explain yourself to not drink on like a Tuesday or Wednesday night. It's like, no, I'm just having water. It's the pestering that gets a little bit where it's like, because I'm like that, like where I've just been pretty strong headed with it, where at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, do I want it? No. Do I need it? No. I'm okay with just saying no. And if someone's like bothering me about no, I do not want drinking, but it can be really freaking tough, especially if your friend group is on that little like pushing buttons side, the peer pressure, the sort, like it can be challenging. And to your point, get you just not want to go out because you're going to deal with it. And again, I still think if you want to have a balance in life and a healthy lifestyle, you can have some drinks. Like you can go out, you can have some fun, you can do all that stuff. But it's like, there's a big difference between using it like that and then like relying on it to fall asleep. Relying on it for other
I don't want
like
people to think that my brain can't have that balance.
No, I wish I could balance even more, but it's like just recognize what it's doing. I think this is why I wanted to bring up this study too, is I don't think people realize what it's really doing, how it's impacting their sleep. Because REM sleep, especially rapid eye movement sleep, I know Dr. Matthew Walker's talked about how closely related just overall REM sleep is to all-cause mortality. And it's one of those, and I think for most people that don't know the difference between like REM and deep sleep, the main pointers, and it's really complex, but REM sleep is typically like the first half of your night is typically higher in REM sleep, where the second half is higher in REM. First half is usually higher in deep sleep. Deep sleep is very restorative for your body. REM sleep is very restorative for your mind, right? So memory consolidation, cognition, being able to function, have energy the next day. That's what REM sleep is so important for. So if you're taking alcohol, if you're taking THC, if you're doing stuff like this constantly overnight, I think there's some more, we can do so many studies on sleep, but I know if you go several nights in a row of pressing down your REM sleep, that next night, I don't know if everyone's ever like done this, but if you've ever drank 3 or 4 nights in a row doing something crazy, the next night you actually get a sober night's sleep. People are like, I've just been having crazy dreams. It's because you're spending so much time in REM trying to catch up from those nights where you've just suppressed it so much, which I always think is funny. But
so fascinating. Also crazy.
And I think, and listen to, and this is just because people that rely on, again, it's like for most people that do take a nightcap to fall asleep, it's not like it's like, oh, I just do it for shits and giggles. It's like, no, it's like, I need that to fall asleep. If you are in that position where you feel like you need something, I would recommend 100%. We're going to do an episode on it, but listen to the Huberman Lab with Dr. Matthew Walker in sleep, where they really help you fine tune your circadian rhythm, fine tune your sleeping habits so you can really improve that. It's not an immediate fix, but I promise you, put in a couple of weeks to improve your sleep hygiene and your sleep quality, sober, is in your scheme of things, like the scheme of your health over your life, so freaking important to just struggle for a few weeks fixing that than relying on this, which is making it worse and worse and worse.
Especially if you're struggling in other aspects of your life from a health perspective. If you're trying to eat healthier and you feel like you're going up and down, if you're trying to exercise and you feel like you're not really consistent, start with sleep. If your sleep is really off, start there. Start there, because it will make all of those other habits a lot easier to adhere to.
I start with everyone, like new clients, stuff like this is something that when I was younger in coaching, I was not as dialed into how massively important sleep is. But if you take someone who's not sleeping well, low time, low quality, and you can make those things significantly better, I guarantee you, without changing anything else in their lifestyle, their training, their diet, anything else, they will see the most remarkable difference. If you could change one thing and see the biggest impact, I would argue sleep is by far taking first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Nuts.
For sure. I totally recognize that it is a systematic issue in our American society of people are overworked. People hate their jobs. People get home and they only have a few hours and they have to do it all over again. Alcohol is a little escape. You can turn your brain off, so to say. So I totally recognize that. And there are so many larger issues that contribute to these common behaviors in our society. But there are also ways to have an even better feeling than reaching for a nightcap if you feel like that is making your day-to-day harder. If you are in a position where you feel like this is something you really want to work on, there are things you could do.
Yeah. It just ends up digging a deeper hole and you don't even realize it. It feels, it momentarily band-aids it, but
we just went, sorry, I feel
enough
like
about
I contributed.
That was number 3. That was my second one. So far, we've been through quadriceps strength and all-cause mortality. We've been on multivitamin use and perceived health. We have been alcohol and sleep. What you got for number 4?
Also completely different. We are going to be looking at SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, work requirements, and the increase in mental health care use. So if you're really confused as to what I'm just said there, a little background on SNAP. And food insecurity too. So food insecurity means the lack of safe, sufficient access to affordable, healthy food. And access can mean a variety of things. And food insecurity is associated with poor mental health care outcomes and poor mental health outcomes. And the majority of SNAP participants face food insecurity. So that's why I brought that into play there.
May I ask a question real quick about SNAP? So you said a SNAP participant. So is a SNAP participant someone who is in an area where they do not have access to?
Yeah. So if you are on SNAP, you qualify for SNAP, you are using SNAP. So you qualify based off of your income, your family size for nutrition assistance. So you can you'll give your little card at the grocery store and you get more food that is more affordable, which is
okay. Thank you. That clarifies it.
So many issues with it. It's not nearly enough food for families, but whatever. So SNAP work requirements, someone has to be working, are federally mandated. So someone has to be working in the family in order to receive SNAP. And that's at a federal level. However, states can get exemptions in counties where there isn't much economic opportunity. So there can be an exemption if one of the parents of this family cannot work. They don't have much opportunity to work. They can still receive SNAP. However, there's a lot of counties, the majority of them, it's you have to be working in order to receive SNAP benefits. So SNAP across the board improves food insecurity for all participants and is successful at that. It's been shown time and time again, replicated year after year. However, recent work requirement policies have made it more difficult to qualify for this program. I'm talking recent. This study was released in June. So this is recent. So like we're talking about with the pandemic, with all of the changes in our economy, with inflation, like
Past couple
there
months.
have been more strict work requirements put out in order to qualify for SNAP. So these counties that originally had these exemptions in certain states where, no, you didn't have to be working, you still receive assistance, you can still get food for your family, have got a lot of states and counties have gotten rid of that completely. So these people are out of jobs and they were receiving SNAP, but now they can't because they changed. And this is because of the so-called rising employment rates and job availability. That's why this has changed. These waivers are being eliminated, exposing hundreds of thousands of SNAP participants to these new requirements. So this is what the objective of this study was, to measure the impact of SNAP, of these work requirements, on the use of mental health care. So how many more people are actually now accessing, because these people are also on Medicaid, are actually using those mental health care benefits with the new requirements. So what they did was 9 counties in West Virginia were exposed. So they were given the work requirements. Why couldn't I just say that? So they analyzed West Virginia's Medicaid claims to assess claims and data to assess whether healthcare visits for depression and anxiety changed after these residents in the treatment counties, so the treatment counties are those who now receive the work requirements, were exposed to the work requirements. So really just wanting to see, like, how is this impacting rates of treatment for depression and anxiety?
Yeah.
And these were individuals as young as 18 up to 49, enrolled in both SNAP and Medicaid at the start of the study. And for women, the work requirements increased visits for depression and anxiety by 26%. So since the start, since enacting, you have to go to work in order to receive SNAP benefits. Since that started, visits for getting mental health services for depression and anxiety increased by 26%. And visits also increased for men, but more slowly than women. So it didn't seem as significant throughout the duration of the study. And there are a wide variety of reasons for that. A lot being that these were kind of in the discussion of the study. More women typically stay at home, typically are the caretaker, things like that. Now they're also the caretaker, and they also have to go to work in order to put food on the table for these families. And again, this is an observational study. This is not cause and effect. It's not saying that these work requirements caused this, but they very much so contributed to this. There was a significant difference. So they played a role. There are so many factors that can go into it, but they definitely played a role. And I found that to be really fascinating and sad because the money that these families are getting, it's not for food, is honestly a smack in the face in the first place. So to even say that, hey, well, now you have to go back to work even if you have 4 kids and you're sacrificing your meals so that you can feed them. Yeah, in order to do that, you have to go back to work. You have to go find a job, or else we're not going to give you money for food. And again, this is going to lead to a lot more studies. This is very new. And I knew this is going to start happening since COVID, since the pandemic. After that, the effects, these are going to start pumping out like wildfire. Studies like this, looking at the mental, this is only going to inform, like, there's definitely going to be more studies on mental health impact of not having access to food and jobs, whatnot. So
it's shocking that this is happening. They're increasing work requirements over the past year or two. You'd almost think it'd go in the other direction.
Because of like there's so many jobs. Like that's what we've been hearing. Like there's an increase in no, there's a need for jobs. There is a need for people to work these shitty jobs because everyone's leaving them. So the need is increasing. And especially with the change in working from home and just the general like younger generations too, knowing their worth and not putting up with shit, and the rise in like self-employment, entrepreneurship, to work jobs that they get paid shit for and are treated like shit for. So that's honestly,
Tell me
That's
how
my
you really
opinion. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit more into the opinion basis. But yeah, okay, there's an increase in job availability. My opinion aside. But if you need to feed your kids, you're going to work those jobs.
That is, it's a cool, I think just whoever said we should take a look at this and then notice 26% is a big number. Like that's not a small rise in increased visits for depression and anxiety. That's not small. And I get like, again, there's probably 100 different things that go into the male versus female, but that totally makes sense for me. But still a 26% rise in that short amount of time that's massive. That's absolutely huge. But it makes sense because I mean, that's one of the basic needs as a human, as a family, as of just needing to support a family. That's not like an option. That's not a privilege. It's not a cherry on top. That is a necessity.
In 2015, 20.8 million families participated in SNAP, which is it's the largest. There's other nutrition assistance programs, but this one is the largest one. We need to have a whole episode on this, and it's something that honestly I've been really struggling with on a day-to-day. I think about it all the time. So money for SNAP is determined in the Farm Bill, which is reviewed every 5 years.
And we're doing a Farm Bill episode.
Yeah. The review process just started, and it will go on for the next year, and they will debate on things like this. They will determine how much money goes to or doesn't go to these families, what the income cap is going to be, making it more like stricter requirements for working. I'm so happy this study came out early because this is going to be discussed in Congress entirely. This is going to be brought up in Congress, hopefully help sway votes. But like, that's why I always say like, it's really great that there's a lot of people on the internet, like giving recommendations for eating healthier. It also really sucks that you have people saying you can't eat XYZ, eat this instead, which is typically 3 times the price. It's like, you don't understand how just negligent saying that is, because we live in a social media bubble where people, especially in the health and fitness space, where the idea of not being able to put food on the table or eat a vegetable in over a month is just, it's like, what? Like, people don't think about that.
And you said over 20 million families. Like, this is not a niche, very niche thing, but it is. And we've talked about this on the episodes before, where it's like the annoying LA influencer who's like, oh, go buy this acai bowl for $15 for breakfast. You shouldn't be eating XYZ. It's like you're kind of ignoring. It's like not everyone has these options.
Yeah,
actually,
get the $9.99 almond milk because it doesn't have gums in it versus the $2.50 one.
It stinks because not only one is it incorrect information most of the time too. Even if everyone had availability, it's not only incorrect, but it's also setting people up and to lead to things like this on mental health. It's like you think, which I would even argue to think it's like they probably think their health is suffering more because of it in their own head. They think they're doing worse off than they actually are because people are telling them how much crap they can actually have. It's terrible.
And then you look at the assistance for foods, and the SNAP foods are these processed food, the cheaper like there are cheaper vegetables but it's not the healthful foods. This is all these people got. Like, that's all they have to work with.
I can't.
It's a really sad system that how many tons of food is wasted every single year. We're not talking about sustainable food practices, reducing food waste. We have so much food in our country. We have so much food to feed people, and people don't have access to food. It is so fucked up. It is something that keeps me up at night.
I want people to urge, when you see us drop the Farm Bill episode, listen and then re-listen and then re-listen, because just from even just looking into it after Mariana shed a light on it for me, it honestly, it's not really believable when you first look at it, when you first hear it. You don't think something like that can be true because it's so it's missing all ethics. It's missing 100% ethics, and it's like, this is our government who's in charge of our public health. We have
politicians right now in Congress determining who gets access to food.
And it's like this Farm Bill episode, it's going to go I think it's so much worse. The Farm Bill, it gets so much.
Oh, it gets worse. Yeah, it's so corrupt.
It's like you really realize like how little public health, especially in the United States, matters. How little it really matters to. It blows my mind. So please, if you see us drop that episode, that might be the most important one we ever do. Who knows? Dang, you got some good ones today.
Yeah, I was
like, you were going outfield. They're good though. I think these were all solid. These were
I loved
4
them.
completely different directions, but they were so.
I love providing that perspective too for our listeners as well.
Oh yeah. So, do you have any notes on that final study before we wrap this one up?
I just think that like this study adds to, there is such a huge growing body of evidence that SNAP work requirements do not improve employment rates. So like that's the goal. Like that's what people will argue. This is going to improve employment. And time again, it is shown that they don't. And that's their intended outcome, to improve employment.
That makes sense.
What they do reduce is SNAP participation, especially among vulnerable groups such as those with low to no income in households living in rural areas. So this keeps people from applying for SNAP because they know that they are not going to get it if they don't have a job. So it just further shows that these work requirements clearly are not working, but they're continuing to be imposed and get stricter. It's just crazy to me. It's all about money. It's all about money.
It's sad.
Yeah. People think I don't care about people and have no soul. I do.
To everyone who's ever, listen to me. Listen to me. If you've ever
Let me tell you something. Have you seen that TikTok with the sound?
Yes, I know exactly. That's why I was laughing. Let me tell you something. Okay. Mariana cares about people. She does. You just got to listen to her. All right. This was freaking solid. So the exciting news too is the more we do these two, the more we are turning our Patreon more research review focused. And hopefully by the next time we do one of these, that's exactly what it is going to be turned into. So if you're in Patreon, hi. We'll say hi to you again when we get off here and actually use the Patreon. If you're not, and if you're joining, that's freaking awesome too. I cannot wait to go deeper into these research reviews, especially over there. Now, signing off, final little notes. Y'all know where to find us, fs.pod on Instagram, on TikTok. We have a Twitter, but we're not going to talk about it because we don't tweet. The eatthismuch.com/fitness stuff. That's where you can go get the free trial. And then if you do decide to continue, get an extra 20% off. That plus our Legion Athletics discount code is going to be in our bio as well in the show notes. So thank you all for hanging out today. DM us what you thought about today's episode or what you'd like to see more in the future. If it's where you want to see us explore, if there's any studies on certain areas, anything, just shoot us a DM. We freaking love this stuff. And we promise, because I know we've gotten a lot of DMs in our personal inbox. I also know a lot have been going into the fitness stuff Instagram DM box, which has not been checked in a little bit because we've got about 100 different things we're juggling right now. So we're trying. So we will, I promise. So DM us personally or on there. I promise you we'll get back this time. And well, I hope you have a productive day. I hope you learned something. And we will be seeing you guys all next time. We love you. Don't we? Say it.
Yes. So much love.
Love you. Bye.